Believe it or not, it's been 20 years since the first ever Equinox hit the dealership floors. And since then, it's grown to become one of Chevy's best-selling vehicles. So naturally, when it came time to update the outgoing generation, Chevy had some pretty big shoes to fill. Well, the vehicle standing behind me is the all-new 4th generation 2025 Chevy Equinox. In today's video, we'll tell you everything you need to know about it, why it's a massive improvement over the prior generation, and why this may arguably be one of the best new compact crossovers you can buy. Now, I reviewed a 3rd generation Equinox just a couple years ago, and I thought it was fine. It rode really well, it had okay technology, but nothing was really class leading. Well, that's where everything changes with this 2025 model year. They've made some massive improvements, one of which is this new trim level called the Active trim. It's more of the off-roady trim level within Chevy's lineup, but it is one of the 2 top trim levels that you can buy in the Equinox. Let's kick things off with the exterior styling. That's really the major change for 2025. So Chevy decided to take a page out of the pickup truck book and make a lot of its swoopy looking crossovers more boxier and muscular. And the Equinox is a perfect example of that. In fact, this is just a shrunken down version of the all-new Traverse that I recently reviewed a few months ago. And honestly, I think this is going to be a great strategy for Chevy and GM because people are really hot about boxy vehicles right now. I mean, look at the Ford Bronco or the Land Cruiser. I mean, the list just goes on. People like boxy, aggressive, muscular looking vehicles. Now, starting off with the front end, you got a lot going on here. So it is a unique fascia for the Active trim level. As you can see, it says Active over there on the front of the grille. Your grille looks a little bit different. It is gloss black, and you've got these fake air vents located on the left and the right hand side. And although I'm going to knock them for being fake, it does look pretty nice. You also kind of have a second tier of grille inserts over here up at the top, and then coming across the side, as you can see on a lot of Chevy products over the last few years, you do have this split headlight design. So your daytime running lamps are up here and your headlights are actually located down here at the bottom. These are LEDs as standard on all trim levels and they're automatic high beam. Now, the Active trim level also adds this gray metallic finish that kind of separates the headlight housing, and you can see more of the color that pops through on some of those trim pieces. So it's a very busy front end, but I think it looks really good. Now, in case you guys are wondering what this color is, it's called Cacti Green. And it looks really nice. It definitely separates this from a lot of the other competition. This color actually reminds me a lot of the Ford Bronco's Cactus Gray color, which I also really like. Now, as we come across the side of the vehicle, you notice they've made it a lot boxier. One of the ways they were able to do that is by squaring off these wheel arches. But of course, they also added some design cues where you have that floating C-pillar that kind of turns into the rear windshield. You also have a little bit of a higher haunch over here near the back. And just overall, it's a very boxy looking vehicle that just kind of screams it's ready to go off-road. Now, obviously not the same level of boxiness as a Ford Bronco, but it's definitely boxier than the prior generation. Now, in terms of the length here, you're looking at 183.2 inches long, which is just barely larger than the prior gen at 183.1. Now, in terms of the width here, it's about 2.5 inches wider. So you definitely get a little bit more space on the inside as compared to the prior generation. And then in terms of height here, it's 65.6 inches tall. Now, ground clearance isn't necessarily discussed by Chevy at this time, but from my understanding, it's probably going to be very similar to the prior generation, which was just around 8 inches. I do suspect that with these larger tires, you're probably going to gain a little bit of ground clearance, but this definitely isn't a Jeep Wrangler. Now, speaking of the wheels, they look a little bit beefier than what you'd suspect on an Equinox, and that's because they are. This Active trim level, being the more off-road ready trim, comes with these General Grabber all-terrain tires. These are 235 by 65, and they wrap around a 17-inch wheel. If you choose the RS trim level, that one's meant to be a little bit sportier, and it's actually going to come with 20-inch wheels, low-profile tires. So it's nice that Chevy offers a variety of different options depending on what your use case is. Now, as I was showing off earlier, you do have this wraparound C-pillar. This is a very similar design trait to the Chevy Traverse I reviewed. And then as you'll notice, you actually have a two-tone roof here. So this is an option for this Active trim level where you got the mirror caps and the entire roof having this white exterior color, and it looks really good. I believe on the RS trim level, you can get it blacked out as well. So it's cool that they make it a little bit funkier with the exterior styling. This is not a standard feature though, you do have to pay for it. And then as you'll notice, you do have a roof rack over here on the Active trim level because chances are you're gonna wanna throw some skis or something up there since you're taking this vehicle on some off-roading. Coming across the rear end, you'll see very similar design cues to the Traverse. I really like this tail light unit. You've got the daytime running light over here. Your brake lights are LED LEDs, and that's all standard on all trim levels. So it definitely makes it look a little bit more premium than some of the competition. This one being the active trim level, you do have some blacked out badging over here. This is the all-wheel drive trim level. Then you got kind of this gray plastic over here at the back, and then your exhaust ports are actually tucked underneath over here on the passenger side. But overall, the exterior styling is a massive improvement to the third generation. Now, interestingly enough, jumping under the hood of the fourth generation Equinox is going to have the least amount of changes as compared to the prior year. We're talking the same 1.5 liter turbocharged four-cylinder that produces 175 horsepower and 203 pound-feet of torque on the all-wheel drive trim. If you choose the front-wheel drive, you're going to get a little bit less torque at 184 foot-pounds. Now, there's two transmission options, either a conventional 8-speed torque converter automatic, that's for the all-wheel drive trim, or you can get a continuously variable transmission, a CVT, if you choose the front-wheel drive trim. Personally, I'd pick the all-wheel drive, especially because fuel economy is almost identical between the two. We're talking 24 in the city and 29 on the highway for a combined 26 on the all-wheel drive version. Now, personally, I think the fuel economy should be a little bit better given the displacement of this engine. 0 to 60 here is just around 8.6 seconds, and you've got a max towing capacity of 1,500 pounds, which is on par with the competition. The curb weight of this particular active trim level is just around 3,600 pounds. Next up, let's jump on the interior and show you some of the big changes for 2025. First off, I want to show you the key, and that's where there's really been no changes. It's the same Chevy key they've used over the years. You got your lock, unlock. You do have a remote start feature, which is nice that's integrated into the key instead of your app. And then you do have a button here to open up your electronic liftgate along with your panic button. Now, jumping inside this vehicle, keep in mind, again, this is the active trim level, so it's going to look a little bit different than some of the other trims, but Chevy has really stepped up their interiors over the last few years, especially with their latest generation of vehicles. Now, starting off with the door panel, this vehicle, being the active trim level, comes with the maple sugar with black interior, and it looks really nice. I love this brown material. This is kind of a faux leather or a vinyl material, and it's meant to be a little bit more durable. It's not necessarily for saving costs here. It's meant to be, easy to clean off and very active lifestyle. Now, over here, you do have kind of a leather wrapped piece, but it is hard touch material. It's just wrapped in leather, makes it feel a little bit more premium than just some cheap hard touch plastic. And then you've got your chrome door handle, you got your automatic lock and unlock, and then this one has the convenience package, which adds memory seat functionality on my particular Equinox. You got your automatic mirror and window controls over here. You got some gloss black plastic over here that merges into your maple sugar armrest, which is really soft touch. Then down here is hard touch plastic. You've got a little storage compartment and a small cup holder, along with the button to regulate your power liftgate. Now, in terms of the speaker system here, I think this is where this vehicle has a little bit of a weakness. It's a 6-speaker audio system, but it's not Bose branded or anything like that. And as of right now, you can't get a premium audio system from Bose or any other manufacturer with this Equinox, unlike the prior generation, which did have that feature. And this sound system is just lacking a little bit of crispness, a little bit of bass. I think this is something that they could improve on. Now, jumping on the interior, this is a really big change for the 2025 model year. It looks totally different than any of the prior generation trim levels that you could get with the Equinox. This has this kind of microfiber material over here in the center. As you can see, these are heated seats standard, but since this has the convenience package, it also adds ventilated seats as well. I do like the little brown with the faux leather over here. So it's just a really nice mix of a bunch of different materials. So you've got vinyl mixed with some microfiber, and you've got some cool piping over here. So you've got this brown orange piping and then active stitched into the headrest itself. And this headrest is a lot softer than the prior gen as well. That was one of my complaints with the third generation Equinox. Now, standard seating is manual adjustable, but since this is the active trim, you get 8-way power adjustable seats with 2-way lumbar support. One last thing to mention about these seats is they're incredibly cushy. That was one of the things I first noticed jumping into this car, is how soft these seats are. I'm not quite sure if the same translates to the RS trim level or the LT trim level, but the active trim level has incredibly soft seats, makes it really easy to do some long road trips in. Now, jumping into the driver's seat, I do like the sound of that door. It sounds pretty solid. Talking about the steering wheel here, you do get a flat bottom design if you choose the RS trim level. Otherwise, it's just going to be circular, but it is heated as standard on all trim levels, and it's a very thick steering wheel. That's something that surprised me. Like, this is something I'd expect out of a C8 Corvette, not really out of an Equinox. Other than that, though, the buttons here are very similar to other Chevy products. On the left-hand side are your adaptive cruise control and your regular cruise control functionality. That is also standard on all trim levels. levels. You got your distance indicator, your speed indicator as well. And then this button is where you can manually shift through the gears. So you can use your paddle shifters located up here to shift through when you push this button. On the right-hand side is how you're going to control your gauge cluster display or your quick access buttons for your heated steering wheel, your voice activation, your audio, and then you can cycle through your different menu items. Over here, this is kind of a rubberized material, and then you've got your blacked out Chevy badge there as well. Now, behind the steering wheel, similar to other Chevy products, not only do you have these paddle shifters, but you also have buttons for your seat track and your volume controls. And I really like how they put them here because that way you're not crowding up the front area, but it's very easy to tap on the buttons when you have your hands on the 9 and 2 notches. Now, to the left of the steering wheel is your stock to control, of course, your turn signals, your windshield wipers front and back. This does have rain sensing windshield wipers. And then you can turn on your high beams by simply flicking on the stock. However, if you want to turn on your headlights themselves, you got to actually use the infotainment screen. I'll show that off in just a second. Now, new for 2025 is they've moved the gear selector onto the column, and that frees up a little bit of space that we'll touch on in just a moment. Now, in terms of the material quality here, like I mentioned, it's a big improvement over the prior generation. So first off, starting off with this air vent, you kind of have this cool grayish color to it, grayish design, and the vent just feels really nice. It's like something you find out of the Camaro products. You twist to open, and it just feels very satisfying. It's very smooth to kind of spin around. Really nice air vent. I didn't think I'd mention that as long as I did, but I did. You also have that same vinyl material over here and that same brown color as on the door panel. And then this is all soft touch material over here as well. So despite it being back here where you're never going to touch it, it is soft touch. And then on the passenger side, you notice you have this darked out trim piece. It looks kind of like piano black plastic, but it also has a little bit of a design touch to it over there on the corner in the passenger side. So they really paid attention to detail here. They didn't just simply slap things in here just to kind of fill in the space. And then this soft padded material goes all the way towards the steering wheel where you outline your engine start stop button. So the design here is just a massive improvement over the swoopiness of the prior gen. Now, talking about what's going on here, you've got an all digital display. So turning the vehicle on, this is an 11-inch display. It's standard on all trim levels. And what I love about it is it's really customizable. Unlike some other Chevy products I've reviewed, like the Trax, where it was really just a static screen for the most part. Here, if you push the buttons on the steering wheel, not only can you open up a full screen maps, which is just fantastic for a vehicle at this price point, not very many compact crossovers offer that, but you can cycle through a more minimalized version. You can go through your Apple CarPlay, Android Auto. You can turn on your safety features here, or a view of your safety features, I should say. And then you can have it in the screen where I originally had it, where you have your audio over here, your speedo over here, and then just some general information on the left-hand side. But love the speed of this, love the graphics here. It's a really nice all-digital display. Now, moving towards the center, I will mention this is a separate screen here. So you have this little bit of a crease kind of giving it a 3D effect, but this is an 11.3-inch touchscreen display, also standard on all trim levels. You don't have to pay extra to get the larger screen, and this is a massive improvement over the 8-inch screen that you had on the prior gen. Now, this has wireless Apple CarPlay, wireless Android Auto, and it's got that Google connectivity like a lot of other Chevy products, so you can ask it questions like you would a smart home device. You can essentially use this like you would Android Auto without actually having to hook up to Android Auto. So a very, very snappy system, and what I will say is it's so much quicker to react than the software that I found in the Trax and the Invista. So this is clearly a faster processor than what they have on the more affordable vehicles, and it's really nice. I've got no complaints here. I think this latest generation that GM and Chevy have been integrated into their vehicles is some of the best in the industry. You still have a physical volume knob. Now, the only downside that I touched on earlier is your headlight controls are built into this quick access panel here at the top. So if you really want to turn them off, you have to go through here. But for the most part, you're probably going to keep it in auto, and then if you ever want to turn your high beams on, you simply tap on the stock. Now, a couple of other things to point out here is your 360-degree camera, which is an optional feature, but when activating it, this gives you a really nice high-definition bird's eye view. Now, there's no type of 3D mode where you're like floating around the vehicle, but I don't think you need it. I honestly think that's more of a gimmick that's kind of a party trick to show to your friends. But here you have all of the different angles. It's got really good high-definition quality. I think GM does 360 cameras, some of the best. I mean, you even have that rear quarter panel view. That's really an impressive system, and this can be optioned on pretty much every single trim level of the new Equinox. Now, moving down from this infotainment screen, you got your air vent controls, and then you've got physical buttons for your climate controls as well. So you've got your heated and ventilated seat buttons over here. You got your fan speed. You can direct where the airflow is going, and they've got some pretty nice feedback to this dual zone climate control system. I don't really have any complaints with the switches. They feel pretty nice. The buttons feel perfectly fine. There's no cheap feeling components here. Now down here you've got this really nice storage compartment that they were able to add because they moved the gear selector over to the steering column. You got 2 USB ports in there, but it's a great space to kind of like throw your wallet or, you know, maybe a set of keys or something like that. Now moving further back, every single trim level but the base trim will come with this wireless charging pad, and it works great. It fits, you know, some of the largest phones in the industry, and I love the fact that it's kind of angled so you can throw your phone in. It doesn't take up this large spot where you kind of have to align the charger perfectly for it to actually start charging your phone. This chargers every single time, and it takes up very minimal space. So I really like how they designed that. You kind of got this little chrome material all across the side, and then new for the 2025 model year is different drive modes. So this one being the active trim level, you've got snow and ice, you got off-road, and you've got normal. There's no sport mode or anything like that, but it does obviously tune the throttle response and the braking and everything based on what drive mode you're in. Now moving further back, you got another little storage compartment. Tons of storage over here, and there's actually more because you got this 2-tier storage compartment. So you can throw your purse or your wallet down here as well. It's kind of got a rubberized material so stuff doesn't start sliding around, but plenty of space over here. You got 2 cup holders, a little bit of piano black plastic, but it's not overkill. And then I do like the same vinyl material you've got here. It's very soft touch, and then opening it up, it is a little bit of a smaller center arm console. You've got this removable little tray over here, and you know, it's somewhat deep, but the nice thing is you have plenty of storage elsewhere in the vehicle, so you don't have to have it in there. Over on the passenger side, you've got a pretty decent sized glove compartment as well. Now moving up above you, because this has the safety and convenience package for $1,000, you do get that digital rear view camera mirror, which is something that Chevy and Cadillac pioneered a few years ago. Moving up above you is your OnStar system, your quick access buttons for emergency services, and then over here is your sunglass holder. Now you can equip every single Equinox with a large dual pane sunroof, so it will be a panoramic sunroof for the first and second row. My particular vehicle obviously does not come with that. And then since this vehicle comes with that $950 convenience package, which includes ventilated seats, it also adds power seat functionality and lumbar support for the passenger seat as well. Now before we jump into the second row, I want to give you my overall thoughts on the first row. I can't say it's a luxurious first row, but it's definitely nice use of materials, very premium quality of materials. It doesn't feel cheap by any means in here, whereas the prior generation, I felt like I could find some things that I could see were just cheap plastics. Here, I don't get any impression of that. It actually feels pretty premium. Again, not luxurious, but premium. I think the Nissan Rogue I reviewed a few weeks ago had some nicer materials. It had some nice leather or faux leather materials, but the technology here is definitely better than the Rogue, and it's at a very similar price point. All right, now jumping into the second row, it's still a really nice place to be, although the first row had some more premium material. So you still get this maple sugar vinyl material on the door panel, but up here where it was leather wrapped in the first row, this is just hard touch plastic, but that's kind of to be expected for second row occupants. You got your window switches over here, a little grab handle down there, and then a small storage compartment along with an extension of your 6-speaker audio system. Now taking a look at these seats, that's where it's almost a spitting image of the first row. You still got that contrast material where you've got the microfiber with some faux leather, and then even your headrest, instead of just making it black faux leather, they actually added that microfiber material. I mean, it's a really impressive looking interior with that maple sugar color. Now jumping back into the second row, it's so surprising that compact crossovers now have so much legroom. I mean, this is not compact by any means. 39.9 inches of space behind the first row. You still got map pockets on the driver and the passenger side as well. And then since this has the convenience package, which includes the ventilated seats in the first row, you also get heated seats in the second row. So that package is definitely worth the money. You also got air vents back here, which is really nice because a lot of compact crossovers didn't have these just a few years ago. Then you got 2 USB ports down there. And then I do want to point out, this is a flat floor for the second row, which means you could easily fit a third occupant down here and they won't have any type of legroom issues. Now, I will also mention you got this nice soft touch center arm console with 2 cup holders over here. And then because this vehicle is pretty boxy on the outside, I got plenty of headroom above me. I'm about 5'9". So if you're over 6 feet, you got no problems here in the second row. And because that extra 2.5 inches of width inside of the cabin as compared to the prior gen, you could probably easily fit 3 occupants back here with really not that much struggle. Now, jumping into the back of the vehicle, every single one but the base trim level will come with this power operated lift gate. However, this one also has the hands-free version where if you stand near the trunk area with the key fob in your pocket, this thing will automatically open after about 3 seconds. And it works hit or miss, just like most hands-free systems. Now back here, it's a pretty okay amount of space, definitely not class leading, but it's 29.8 cubic feet of space behind that second row. On the right hand side over here, you got your cigarette style power outlet. No household power outlet in here, which is a little bit unfortunate, but you got some lighting over here on the left and the right hand side, and you got a little bit of space, or hidden storage I should say, located underneath the trunk floor. Now if you fold down that second row, which you actually have to do by pushing the levers on the left and the right hand side, there's no quick release button, then you can get upwards of 63.5 cubic feet of space behind that first row. Next up, let's talk about the safety features, and that's where Chevy does a really good job because there's almost nothing that you need to pay for. You get adaptive cruise control, blind spot monitoring, enhanced lane centering and lane departure warning. You've got pedestrian detection, emergency braking. I mean, the list goes on. Really, the only safety features that you can pay for is that rear view camera mirror, the traffic sign recognition, rear pedestrian detection, and that 360-degree camera. Other than that, everything else comes out of the gate. Now, in terms of warranty here, it's pretty standard across the industry. We're talking 3-year, 36,000-mile bumper-to-bumper warranty, 5-year, 60,000-mile warranty on the powertrain, and you have your first maintenance paid for by Chevy and GM. You just have to do it at a local dealership. Next up, let's talk about the pricing. So the entry-level trim is called the LT, and before the $1,400 destination charge, it starts at $28,600. That's under 30 grand for a vehicle with tons of safety features and plenty of that technology I was talking about on the inside. Now, if you step up to the Active or the RS trim level, they're identical in price. They start at $33,000 before destination. Now, if you choose all-wheel drive, which is optional on all the trim levels, that's about a $2,000 premium. And this particular vehicle with the all-wheel drive, with the convenience package, with that safety and technology package, this one tops out just around $38,380, which is a really good steal for everything you get packed in this vehicle. It's better than some of the competition. Now, in terms of the Active or the RS, it's really up to personal preference. They're both very well equipped, but one looks a little bit more off-road rugged, the other one looks a little bit more luxurious sporty. So it's kind of subjective on which one you want to go with. All right, next up, let's jump inside of the Equinox and see how the 4th generation drives. So setting off in the all-new 4th generation Equinox, a lot of things are similar to the prior generation, namely, like I mentioned, the powertrain, but also in terms of just the general maneuverability. I mean, this thing, being a compact crossover, like all compact crossovers, very easy to drive, very maneuverable, very nimble. I think that's why this segment sells so well, is they're just such an easy vehicle to drive. The proportions are great here. There's no worrying about hitting anything, especially with that 360-degree camera. It's fantastic. Another thing I have to mention again is just the quality or the cushiness of these seats. They're so soft. I wish all the cars I own had seats like this. They're just really like, it's like I'm sitting on a couch cushion at home. It's a really, really comfortable. You got to experience it for yourself. And I think the fact that this has that microfiber material makes it feel even more like a couch cushion than a traditional car seat. Now, in terms of ride quality, we just drove over some pretty big bumps in the road. And this is, I think, where Chevy takes the cake among the competition. I don't know what Chevy's done over the last few years, but they've really done a great job, in my opinion, in regards to their suspensions. They're just seem to be much softer riding cars than a lot of their competitors. You can drive over the same bumps in, say, a Nissan Rogue or a Honda CRV, and it's going to feel a lot rougher than it does in this thing. They just soak up bumps really well. That's one thing I really enjoyed about the prior generation, and they've carried that over into this new generation as well. I mean, it's super soft over bumps. We're about to drive over some train tracks right now, and let's show you what it feels like through the camera. You could barely feel that in the cabin. You could probably hear it more than you feel it. They do a really good job with their suspension tuning to make it feel like a very soft vehicle on the inside. Now, in terms of acceleration, you guys saw me do a little bit of a pull there. I think it's perfectly fine. I know a lot of people will complain about the 1.5 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder, and I can see why. The displacement on its own seems pretty weak. This engine doesn't feel any weaker to me than a typical 2-liter turbocharged engine. I really can't tell that this is a 1.5 liter unless people told me that it is. It feels like any other turbocharged engine. I think that's helped by the fact that this has the 8-speed automatic transmission. If this had the CVT, I'd probably feel a little bit differently about it. And I think that's also why I don't feel the difference between this and some of the competition, is because a lot of the competition come with CVT transmissions. And so because of that, it feels a little bit more sluggish, even if they have a bigger displacement engine. This was the same feeling I had for the prior gen. I never really had a complaint about its powertrain. Would I have preferred a 2-liter turbo? Yeah, probably more so for longevity reasons. I'm not sure how a 1.5 liter that's constantly being revved to the max is gonna hold up over time. But a 2-liter is probably gonna be just as unreliable. Now, that's just a claim. I don't believe Chevy's had any issues with this 1.5 liter turbo, but over time, that's where we're really gonna find out how reliable this engine is. But in terms of day-to-day performance, it's perfectly fine. You don't need a 2-liter turbo in a vehicle like this. This one is plenty spunky. It gets you in and out of traffic. I've never felt like this has been underpowered. Now, for the next part of this video, we're gonna get onto the freeway and see how it feels accelerating and just in terms of general freeway driving. So here we are at 20 miles an hour. We're gonna gun it. And we're at 60, so took a little bit of time. Granted, that was uphill, and 0 to 60 really isn't where this engine's supposed to shine, or really any compact crossover engine. It's meant for going from 0 to 30 or 30 to 50, you know, that type of daily drivability. And then this is also not in sport mode because this vehicle doesn't have that. I think it probably should have some sort of sport mode just to give you the feeling that you're going quick, even if you're not. Like some of the other competition offer, but you know, that's not really important. This isn't a hot hatch. This isn't supposed to be a sporty crossover. It's perfectly fine. Like I said, the engine works great, especially when you're just maneuvering in day-to-day traffic. What I will say is, in terms of interior road noise, you hear a little bit more than I would suspect, and I think that has to do with the all-terrain tires. These are going to be a little bit louder than just your regular all-season or summer tires, and so I think you're hearing a little bit more of that road noise coming into the cabin. I'd be curious to see how the RS trim level sounds like, because that's driving on, you know, sport tires or all-season tires that are low profile. It might sound a little bit different. Then again, it's not overly loud. It's not like I can't have a conversation with people in the second row, but it's a little bit louder than like the Nissan Rogue I recently reviewed. I'm comparing it mostly with that because it's fresh on my mind. And, you know, overall, this car is really a great daily driver. There's really nothing to complain about. It does everything really well, especially when it comes to the ride quality and just general day-to-day performance in city traffic. So to finish off this video, what are my overall thoughts on the 4th generation Equinox? Well, I really like it. I actually like the prior generation too. It surprised me with how good it was, but there were some things that were lacking on that one, like the technology, like the exterior styling. Both of those things have been solved with this 4th generation. The interior technology, some of the best in its class. That 360 camera is really, really good, and that wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto with that Google connectivity, it's a fantastic UI. Also, the exterior styling, I think it looks better than some of the competition. I can kind of see where they took maybe some hints from the Toyota Rav4, including this color option, maybe that boxiness, but since this is newer, I think this looks a little bit better. I may take this over some of that competition. Now, I do still have a little bit of constructive criticism on this Equinox, and that really has to do with the powertrain options. And the fact is, there really aren't any. It's a 1.5 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder, whereas the competition are throwing in some hybrids or plug-in hybrid powertrains, and Chevy just doesn't offer that as of today on this particular Equinox. And I think they're missing out on some of the gangbuster sales that Toyota and Honda are seeing from their hybrid options. That is something I think maybe Chevy will work on in the future, but it may be a little too late. But what are your thoughts on the Chevy Equinox? Would you take this over some of the competition, and why? Let me know down in the comments below. If you guys enjoyed today's video, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for all of the weekly car videos. Also check out my social media, same as the channel name, for short form content on this vehicle and others. Until next time, everybody, I hope you stay schwazy, stay healthy, Have a wonderful day.